Okay, I'm Susan Blunt, one of the co-directors of Neighbors on Call. Tonight, you'll also be hearing from some of our other leaders. I was babbling on there for a bit about how glad I was to see you all, but I guess you didn't hear that. So thank you for coming. It's fun to have a reunion and a kickoff all rolled together. And we also are grateful for the new folks who showed up tonight. We're so grateful that our group has continued to grow, and we have a great time together. We are Neighbors on Call, and you notice my sweatshirt matches the logo. We are an all-volunteer organization. We're focused on electing Democrats to the North Carolina State Legislature. We are organized into 5 chapters, including one for our wonderful out-of-state folks who have joined us more and more as we have been in the pandemic. I keep saying the silver lining is that we've been able to include out-of-state people so much, and we love that. We're so pleased that Senator Jay Chaudhuri from Wake County, Senate District 15, and Blair Reeves, Executive Director of Carolina Ford, are here to help us charge into 2022. So before we get into our discussion tonight, let's first lay out our purpose for being here. So why do we focus on the North Carolina legislature? You should know, if you weren't involved back then, that in 2018, Neighbors on Call helped break the supermajority in the North Carolina State Legislature, and we can't lose that ground. Whenever one party holds a supermajority in the legislature, that's defined as 60% of the seats in both chambers, then the governor's veto is powerless because it is easily overturned by a supermajority vote. Think about it. This past year, Governor Cooper vetoed at least 16 bills, including one that would have repealed the requirement for permits for buying pistols. The Dems in the legislature stuck together and to protect his veto, so they were able to reinforce his veto. Now, without those vetoes, our women's reproductive rights would resemble those in Texas, HARS, and we'd have voter suppression like in Georgia. So here's the scary part. How close are the Republicans to regaining the supermajority? Just 2 seats short in the Senate and 3 seats short in the House. We lose just those small number of seats and we're doomed. So it's just too close for comfort. That's why we want to focus on the legislature, because they have so much control over the state. So I'm going to pass the baton now to Tracy Raines, one of our Knox Central chapter leaders, who will carry it forward from here about what we're going to do in 2022.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what Knox can do in 2022. And knowing that the races are, that the number of seats needed to take the supermajority is so slim, we really need to have a good plan. So number one, we'll decide which districts to focus on. We're going to consult with experts to identify state house and Senate races that can be won or lost by tiny margins, very, very purple districts that we can make a difference in. And number two, Knox going to ask you to commit to talking to left-leaning voters in these key places. We know that canvassing is the most effective way to contact voters, and phone banking also extends our reach and enables participation by volunteers across the state and from out of state. As always, the actions will be organized either by the incumbents or groups like County to County Project. Our job is to organize and support volunteers for these actions. Tonight, we will ask you to commit to actions in February. And then number three, we're going to keep doing these things. That's it. It's not rocket science. It's just a lot of elbow grease. Now let's address some major concerns you may have coming up into the evening. So I'm going to pass it over to Susan Lindsay, who's the manager of canvasses and phone banks and our campaign liaison, to help answer some of those questions and address those concerns. Susan.
Thank you, Tracy. The first thing I want everybody to know is that you can make a difference. I know as one person, it can feel like you're not moving the needle. But in 2021, hundreds of us canvassed and phone banked. And it's our collective work that is what moves the needle and what wins these races. And that means that each of us needs to make the decision to join in. Keep in mind that Ricky Hurtado won by only 477 votes in 2020. So just a few volunteers can make or break a win that's that close. Second of all, you don't have to, and you can't do everything. You need to pick a lane and work in it effectively, and that's what we're doing here. And you need to trust that other people will fill the other lanes. What about the judicial races, you might say, and Sherry Beasley for Senate? NOC focuses on voters in target legislative races, but we can make a difference in statewide races too. Remember that Sherry Beasley lost her race for Chief Justice by just 401 votes statewide. That kind of margin could be covered in purple districts, and and by the time we get close to the election, we are always reminding people to vote the entire ballot, top to bottom. This time, we really need to get the most out of every door knock and every phone conversation we have. So you might wonder about registering new voters, which is really, really important, but it's not NOC's focus. There are a lot of groups working on that and doing a great job. Our focus is on left-leaning voters who are already registered but might not vote. This is a tremendously important group to reach. And frankly, it's an easier group to turn out in the short term. We will, however, be prepared to register new voters when we encounter them during our canvasses. For example, if another person in the household needs to be registered. Your time is really, really valuable, and we all understand that. But if you can do just one thing this year, please choose talking directly to voters. As a bonus, you'll meet some really terrific people, and you'll also sleep better because you will know you have done what needs to be done. It's okay to be nervous about talking to voters. We get it, and NOC offers lots of support. You will not be put out there by yourself. We will be with you every step of the way. You'll always have a script, training, and a targeted voter contact list. You'll get to meet the candidates at the canvases and phone banks, and you definitely aren't expected to know everything about them. It's all about increasing name recognition with a smile. A NOC point person is going to be at every event to support you. And for canvases, you'll always canvass with a partner. You don't even have to talk. If you want to be a silent canvasser, we'll pair you up with an experienced canvasser, and you can follow them until you're ready to talk yourself. If you have COVID safety concerns about canvassing, you can make your participation be a lit drop. For phone banks, you'll usually get a script in advance, and you can request a buddy to help you get the hang of things. You've got this, and we've got your back. So come on out and let's.
Everybody for being here. My Zoom is a little wobbly. I don't know about anybody else's, but it would help me out if you would turn off your video so that I don't lose you. Thank you for doing that. So thank you again for being here. We have two wonderful guests. Senator Jay Chaudhuri represents State District 15 in Wake County. He grew up in Fayetteville and graduated from Davidson College, Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, and NC Central University School of Law. And Senator Chaudhuri is now in his third term in the state Senate, and he serves as the minority whip. Blair Reeves is the executive director of Carolina Forward, a nonprofit progressive organization that engages in public policy research, journalism, public communications, and organizing. He lives in Chatham County. Welcome to you both. We are going to talk with Senator Jay Chaudhuri first. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Susan. And Susan, I am actually at my alma mater getting ready to go to the basketball game with my daughter here at Davidson, but I appreciate you all including me.
Oh, you're very, very nice to squeeze us in before that. Thank you very, very much for that.
Yes.
To start us off, can you just give us a brief update about what is going on in the General Assembly, particularly about the primaries, but other bills that we should be watching for? Any highlights?
Yeah, let me say one thing before I answer the question about primaries and where things stand on partisan gerrymandering, because I wish there was a way for us to create hundreds of neighbors on calls around the state, because I want to share one statistic with you all. Last year, that in the 2020 election, in our effort to flip the state Senate, and Blair Reeves can speak to this as well because he does amazing work as well. We did a post-election analysis, and we discovered, or we found out, that if we had turned out only 13,500 more voters in 5 state Senate seats, Senate Democrats would be in control of the North Carolina State Senate. And to Becca and Susan's point, those are not voters that needed to be registered. Those are voters that actually had a partisan score of 70 or higher. So the work that Neighbors on Call is doing is actually what we actually need to do based on the evidence and the empirical evidence we've already seen from the 2020 election. The second thing I'll say about the importance of door knocking is when I first decided to run for the North Carolina State Senate, I read this book called Victory Lab by Sasha Eisenberg, and it is a history of get out the vote efforts and looks at political science studies as to what moves or motivates voters to get out to vote. And it's not television, it's not direct mail, it's actually phone banking and having person-to-person contact with voters. And so if there was a way for us, I think as a party, as Democrats, to invest more in the types of things that you're doing, I think that this is our path to securing victory, and I commend you all. Let me also answer the question that you posed to me. So first of all, last week, we came back into session to vote on whether to extend the primaries from May to June 7th. This was a proposal that was made by the Republicans. It was based on the fact that they felt that voters were going to be confused about what was going on about primary dates and they also made this argument that the state Supreme Court needs more time to make their decision. But as many of you all know, I believe every single Democrat in both the House and the Senate voted against that bill to extend the primary. And we expect that Governor Cooper will veto that bill, because we believe right now that this case rests with the state Supreme Court, and it is really the court's decision whether to establish the primary dates or not. They've already extended the primary date. I think those of us who are following the case closely decision with enough time for filing to take place starting on February 24th. Secondly, what other bills can we expect in the General Assembly this year? I think that the most important bill, and again, I think this is a testimony to why Democrats need to continue to uphold Governor Cooper's veto. We're demonstrating what breaking the supermajority in 2018, why it's worked in the Senate, and why we continue to need to keep it in place. Is we have the Republicans, we think, coming to the table, even on something like Medicaid expansion. And for those who have seen, Senate Pro Tem Berger and Speaker Moore have appointed a bipartisan group of legislators to focus on Medicaid expansion. You actually on the Senate side have a number of Republican senators that are fairly open-minded and pro Medicaid expansion. And so I'm somewhat optimistic that we're going to see some movement on healthcare affordability and access.
That is good news. I look forward to seeing what happens with that. Can you also catch us up on redistricting without going too far into the weeds on that? Just what happened so far with the maps and what is going to happen next?
So predictably, the Republican General Assembly in both the House and the Senate have drawn gerrymandered maps, and those aren't my words. We now know from the trial court ruling that came out after the 4-day trial that took place earlier this month, that the trial court said, and I'm not making this up, I mean, the trial court said in its 200+ opinion, if you read it, it said 59 times it used this phrase, that they were pro-Republican partisan gerrymandering by the General Assembly. And so there's really not a dispute about facts as to whether there is gerrymandering or not. I think what we're seeing now is a kind of a judicial philosophical difference on whether the court should intervene to redirect the legislature to draw maps because they have engaged in partisan gerrymandering, or should the legislature really be given the purview and kind of exclusive control in keeping the maps that we have, which is the lower court's opinion. But we know, and I'm not going to predict on what the state Supreme Court is going to, what decision they're going to come down with, but we certainly know that the United States Supreme Court has said that while it refused to rule on partisan gerrymandering, it did say that it was state Supreme Courts around the country, it was within their purview to decide that or not. And so I remain hopeful that we will see a positive decision come out from the court, hopefully as early as this month. And we can talk a little bit, Becca, about what the implications.
But just in terms of the timing of that, next week is when they start the arguments, right?
That's right. So the hearing will be actually held on Wednesday, on February 2nd. As you know, filing will start on February 24th. I guess perhaps there's some expectation that we should see a court decision that'll come down before the filing date, but also that it'll redirect the General Assembly to redraw those maps. Now, you know, the Republican General Assembly has argued that they need 2 weeks to redraw these maps. We know from past history that they can actually redraw those maps in 2 to 3 days. What I will also tell you is that I think the redrawing of the maps it may lead to one on the Senate side, it could lead to one state Senate seat becoming more lead Democrat. But in other instances, we could see that our state Senate seats become slightly more favorable and we may pick up a couple of Democratic points. So Senator Batch's district, which I know is a focus of this group, I mean, we may see that you might add a couple of Democratic percentage points in our state Senate district. But look, I think that being said, it does not mean that our challenge for 2020 is by any means done. If anything, we need to make sure that we turn out our voters remains a challenge for us. And if we see a depressed turnout among Democrats, even these seats that have now been ruled to be not partisan will be a challenge for us. So it is absolutely crucial that we continue to turn out our voters and make sure they turn out on November 2022.
Which is why we are not waiting, and we're going to talk with Blair about which of the districts that we definitely want to start looking at now, regardless that we know we're going to be vulnerable districts. There are so many shiny objects right now, it's really hard to focus. What do you think are the most important things at stake in the 2022 elections? And can you give us a preview of what the state Senate caucus strategy is for 2022 to the degree that you can tell us?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of shiny objects. I mean, I will start by a basic message, which I know that Neighbors on Call has focused on, is the importance of reminding people that state legislators are critical and important in trying to save our democracy, right? I mean, what we're seeing with the playbook by former Trump loyalists and officials and focusing on state legislatures, I think underscores the importance for us to make sure that we focus on state legislatures. But, you know, I don't want to take anything away from the U.S. Senate or for the state Supreme Court races and all the focus that we have. But I think it's critical that when you talk to our neighbors and our families, they need to understand that when you're talking about increasing public education, that is a decision made in Raleigh. When you're talking about expanding Medicaid, that is a decision that's made in Raleigh. When you're talking about voting rights, reproductive rights, the reason that we are not Texas, where women now have to travel hundreds of miles in order to carry an unwanted pregnancy, the reason that we are not Georgia, where voters have to wait in line to, which are prohibited from receiving food or water while they're waiting in a long line at the polls, the reason that we are not Florida, where now the General Assembly has allowed employers to penalize they're allowing Florida state government to penalize employers if they require their employees vaccination. The reason we are not Florida and Georgia is because we have enough Senate Democrats and Governor Cooper to uphold that veto, as Susan was talking about. And that, I think for us, that is the short-term challenge that we have to stay laser focused on.
Thank you so much. We're going to turn to Blair Reeves, and we will have some audience Q&A later. We'll try to get to that, Senator Chaudhuri, before you have to leave for the game. I know you need to head out at 8:15, so hopefully we'll be coming back to you shortly. Blair, are you here? I know he was putting his baby to bed first. Okay, if he's not here, Susan, how about we switch our agenda sequence?
Sure.
Okay, so Senator Chaudhuri left us on a good note for this too, because as he said, preventing the Republicans from getting that supermajority back is critical. And this is a little spoiler alert for what we will be hearing from Blair, but there are 3 incumbents that we are currently focusing on who will be vulnerable in any scenario, we think. And those are Senator Sidney Batch, who's in the southern part of Wake County, Representative Terrence Everett, who's in the northern part of Wake County, and Representative Ricky Hurtado in Alamance County. He flipped his seat in 2020, and he's the only Latinx legislator in the General Assembly. They are all very likely to have tough races this year, no matter what happens with the maps. So, and if you've been working with Neighbors on Call in the past, you're already very familiar with these candidates and know how wonderful they are. We are going to pause right now for a 2-minute break while you sign up to talk to voters in key districts. So we're focusing on those 3. If you're new to all of this, we encourage you to try one, commit to one action. And it can be either phone banking or canvassing. It's in February and we're spilling over a little into March on this calendar. And if you've done this before, if you can, we encourage you to pick 2. This early voter contact is critical. So please go to neighborsoncall.org. Thank you, Sanjay, for putting that in the chat. You're going right now. We're going to start the timer. Just give me a second to catch up. Can do it. All right. Sorry,
I have a timer, Rebecca.
I'm having trouble sharing my screen.
Ah, there we go.
You see it? See the wrong thing?
Not quite there.
Yay, okay, I did it. Sorry about that. All right, whoops.
There you go.
We got our timer going. All right, 2 minutes. Let's see what we can do. Go to neighborsoncall.org. Start filling in, get out your calendar, start making your selections.
All right. And
Fran is our out-of-state chapter leader, and she is going to help us fill this very awkward void for 2 minutes.
I love filling voids. I always have something I can say about Neighbors on Call and the people who are in this meeting. First of all, I want to thank some particular people that are here because I'm the out-of-state coordinator. There are several people here from non-North Carolina organizations who have been absolutely terrific in the past and or will be in the future at raising our awareness with volunteers outside the state and recruiting volunteers with us. So I want to welcome all of you. You can put your name in the chat or you can raise your hand if your video is on. And in any case, welcome. And wherever you are, we know you want to look great while you're canvassing. So this is the 30-second advertisement in the middle of the program, which says we have these wonderful T-shirts and sweatshirts listed that you can order. So this beautiful knock short sleeve, long sleeve T-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie is available for you and only you, only till next Tuesday. So We will email you the link tomorrow. It's also in the chat. And we are super happy that you're here and that you are ready to participate and that you're signing up. So I wonder if Senator Chaudhuri is still here. And Senator Chaudhuri, if you would like to give us a pitch about why it's so important to sign up for these phone banks, for these three wonderful candidates.
Yeah, I am still here. Let me give you my pitch. First of all, you can't find, honestly, a group of better legislators that represent the hope and future of our state. I know each of these members personally. They are some of my favorite. Each of them are incredibly special human beings. They make each of us proud to represent North Carolina, and they've also done wonderful things in the General Assembly. So just on the decent human being point alone, you all should go out and phone bank for these individuals. But secondly, as I posted in the chat, both phone banking and door knocking are critical. On the phone banking side, when I ran my campaign in 2016, we did 300,000 phone calls. We call people over and over again. And as you know, through training, folks can get upset about that. But I'm telling you, if you have a one-on-one conversation with voters and you listen to what their concerns are, it is the single best way to move voters. A 30-second ad is not a substitute for a conversation that you can have with a voter on behalf of these candidates. And as I've said, I mean, we need to do more of this, because this to me is the key to the future. What I'll also say, what Neighbors on Call is doing is also building an infrastructure that will be a foundation, I think, for the future of our state to flip the General Assembly back blue, which I believe we will do. I think it will happen within a couple of election cycles. But this right now, to me, is a moment to protect and send back some incredible members. But it's also an opportunity, I think, to build our infrastructure so we can turn this state blue once again.
Thank you, Senator Chaudhuri. And I believe that the 2 minutes are up, and we are so thankful to those of you who've signed up for phone banking.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just tack on to what Senator Chaudhuri said there, which is right now what we're talking about is like the most easy conversations we could be having with voters, because we're really just sharing information about the incumbents and saying, this is your incumbent and they're here to help you. And these are the constituent services they offer. And what would you like me to tell them you're thinking about? And that's it. We're not asking for anything. We're not asking for their vote. And it's just a really easy, positive conversation that's building that name recognition. So another little plug there. Thank you, everybody. Of course, you can keep signing up while we keep going. And I'm checking in. Is Blair, has he joined us?
Not yet.
All right. Senator Chaudhuri, you're still up. We have more questions for you.
I'm happy to answer them. Excited to be with everyone.
Thank you so much for being flexible and going with flow. Can you talk to us about specific districts that the Senate is watching, for which ones you, first, well, so we have these maps now that we don't like, but if we're stuck with them, which Senate seats you're watching as being really tight under these, and which other ones you're watching that are the ones that kind of no matter what happens, we should pay attention to?
So it's a really good question. I think folks to understand, just as background, I mean, we have a state constitutional provision split. So, you know, after the census is done, we have to do what's called county clusters. And as you can imagine, there are only certain you can have in order to reach this idea that you can have proportional representation.
I think we're losing you.
The things we talk about, you know, as okay. So when we were talking about county clusters, I mean, I think it actually provides us some good insight into what the most important races are going to be. And so let me identify the ones we think are going to be important. So as I mentioned, Senator Sidney Batch, this organization has a long history with, is on our list for protecting and shielding an incumbent. That's what I like to talk to our investors and donors about. It's about protecting and shielding Senate Democratic incumbents. And so Sidney Batch is on the list. When you look at Northern Wake County, we have a Northern Wake County Granville district, which I think in some shape or form will still remain the same. That will be a very, very competitive district. We've got some great candidates. We've got some particularly great candidates running there. So that would be another one to keep in mind in Wake County for those that are close to it. And then as we shift further east, we have the Granville, Nash, and Vance County, which frankly, the Supreme Court's decision will not alter that county cluster. That will remain in place. Lisa Barnes is the incumbent, is a Republican incumbent in that race. We have Commissioner Speed, who is from Franklin County, whose father served in the legislature, who will be challenging Senator Barnes. And so that will be another district for us to look at. By the way, that district, maybe some folks think that district seems unusual, but it's actually trending Democratic because of the growth we're seeing in suburban counties, very similar to what you see in Alamance County, where Representative Hurtado is. Then we go to New Hanover County, which has really been a purple county for us. Senator Michael Lee, who was the incumbent there, that he was defeated, as many of you all remember, in 2018, and then came back and defeated our incumbent Harper Peterson in 2020. It's a very, very close Senate district. It's generally flipped between a few thousand votes, which again, I think illustrates the importance of door knocking. And then as we go down to Southern Wake County, which is a little bit more uncertain with Senator Jackson not coming back to the Senate, Representative Rachel Hunt, who is Governor Jim Hunt's daughter, will be running in a district that we expect to also be competitive. And I think with Senator Natasha Marcus, who many of y'all know, they gerrymandered out of her district. I think if we see a redraw of that district, there's a potential that district could also be competitive. So there's between 5 to 7 districts that are key for us to focus on. And perhaps Blair, and I see Blair already has this up on the slide. I think he'll probably just reiterate what I've just told you all.
Hey guys,
Thank you so much. Yeah, Blair, we'll pass it to you.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I was putting with my wife. We were doing bedtime with our 4-year-old, and then I get back on here. We had Zoom link issues, so entirely on me. I apologize for that.
You were not the only one who had the Zoom link issues. There is an annoying delay from registering to getting that Zoom link, and we don't know how to fix that. So I'm sorry.
We ran into the exact same problem.
Yeah, we ran into the exact same thing when we did our thing as well. We're all learning to adapt to this. So for all of you who I don't know here, my name is Blair Reeves. I'm the executive director of Carolina Forward. And I probably, going into a lot of what I think what Jay was just saying, let me just give a really high level view of kind of how we look at the map right now and as it stands. As we all know, like, these things could change. We're not expecting drastic changes to the map. I would love it if Anita Earls would drop the hammer and appoint a special master and give us great maps, but I don't think it's probably really likely. I think we're gonna have a couple of tweaks here and there, if anything. The way we're looking at it at Carolina Forward right now is our view is a little different from the caucus, but it's very, very similar. The way we're looking at the maps right now, looking at the Senate, we think we basically have 17 seats that are pretty safe, and the magic number is 21. If we get 20 seats, the Republicans win a supermajority, and then we're Texas, or then we're Georgia or Mississippi. Then things get really bad really quick. But we're not Texas and we're not Georgia, so we think that we can actually we can defend Governor Cooper's veto in both the Senate and the House. In the Senate, we have to win 4 seats. So we start with 17. We have to win 18, 19, 20, 21. 21 is a magic number. There are 6 seats that are really competitive here. So I'm sure that Jay, you've already talked about Rachel Hunt down in Mecklenburg. You have over in District 11. Let me see, who is that again? I have my spreadsheet over here. He knows better than I do. Oh yeah, so that's Mark Speed over in Vance, Franklin, Nash County.
We have in District 7, I think that is Adam Erickson down in New Hanover. Of course, Sydney in Southern Wake. That's very, very important to hold there. And that's going to be a really big one. I want to feel like in Wake County and Mecklenburg County, I feel very good about our chances to defend and win back territory there. But it's going to require a lot of investment on our part. And then, of course, we have in District 24 as well. So we're actually going to moving the ball a little bit over here too. I think that let me see. I believe that is Jay. Help me out there. Is that is Danny Britt's district? So I don't think we're probably going to take that. That should be a district we should be able to get. But Danny Britt is very popular. It is Robeson County. It's a very hard place there. So the point being, the 21 is the magic number. We have the districts to do it. So we don't have to win any crazy Republican districts to do this. We don't have to have a big upset. We need to win 50-50 districts all the way down. And
So let me just put a fine point in what you're saying, which with this yellow box on 21, you're saying that's just the firewall.
That is the fire. Yeah, that's where we can sustain Governor Cooper's veto. Yeah. Jay, is there? And you know about it's better than I do. So, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, let me just add. I mean, certainly Senator Batch is the firewall, but given the fact that we are going to lose other incumbent members due to redistricting and what could be argued as racial gerrymandering, we actually need to win. We actually need to win 4 out of the 5 races here to stay at 21, because there is a possibility. Again, we don't know how the court's going to rule on this, but we could pick up a seat in the northeastern counties. Right now, it's a Republican lean Senate district, but this is actually an illustration of where striking down partisan gerrymander can make a difference. But we are going to lose Senator Ben Clark, who was in a Cumberland Hoke cluster. That cluster is actually changing. We're also going to potentially lose the Wayne Wilson County district. But again, I mean, we're a little bit in an uncharted territory because we don't know how the courts are going to lose. And so it's not necessarily that we're going to be down 20 and we have to get to 21 with Senator Batch. We actually need to pick up a couple of more of these seats.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's where we get to a starting basis of 17 relatively safe seats. And then we, pick up, net from that. And by the way, there's a really good on our website. We have a really good breakdown of kind of what the maps look like for the Senate and the House. Jay, you just mentioned Senate District 2, which is this completely bonkers district over in Northeast. That's the one that you can kind of see it in the background here. It looks better than on the website, but it reaches all the way from Carteret County down, where you have Beaufort, all the way up to like Warrenton on the Virginia border. It's this crazy, wacky district that again also draws out Senator
Ernestine
Bazemore. Yeah, I knew it started with a B. So yeah, it drew her out of her district, which is a real shame. Let me go on real quick to go look at the House. So by the way, we did these. We wrote down the numbers for all of these districts here, and then they passed a bill like renumbering all the districts again. So a few of the numbers are not correct, but the districts are correct. The numbers aren't all right, but I think these are basically pretty good here. We are at, again, a basis of 40 safe seats right now. To sustain Governor Cooper's veto, we need 49 seats in the House. So the House, again, 120 members, and they need 3/5 of that. So 49 is our magic number to sustain the veto. And that sounds kind of scary, but again, we don't have to win any crazy districts here. We can actually do this by holding 50-50 districts, holding Democratic districts that we're already in, and picking up a couple of net new ones as well. So a couple I just want to call out here real quick. James Galliard there in District 25. He's actually running for Congress now, so that's actually an open district. We feel pretty good about that district as it is right now. It is a D+4 district. It's not something we can take for granted, of course, but we have some strong candidates going in there. We feel pretty good about that. District 2, I believe that is actually Howard Hunter, and District 5 is something. No, District 2, excuse me. That is northern not Granville, Person, and Durham County. We feel pretty good about that. That's Ray Jeffers. We feel pretty good about that as well. Linda Cooper Suggs, District 24, Howard Hunter, District 5 up in Northeast. Again, Ricky there in 63. District 43, 45, these are ones I really have my eyes on. Those are 2 House seats in Cumberland County that historically they've been drawn to be competitive, because basically Cumberland County, Fayetteville is very strong Democrat. And if Cumberland County were drawn pretty fairly, you'd have a couple of Democratic leaning districts there. But the way they drew it, there are 2 very safe Democratic seats, and then 2 they managed to draw to be competitive, D+1, R+1. The caucus is still looking for a challenger, a Democratic challenger to run in District 45. So if you know anyone in Cumberland County, tell them to get in touch with the county party ASAP, because that's a big problem. 43, we have some good candidates running, people there. It's a 50-50 district. It's going to be really tough. Cumberland is a really important county for us. So that's a place where we're looking at very, very closely. Terrence Everett in District 35, that is Northern Wake. They really went after his district pretty hard. Republican leadership, by the way, hates Terrence Everett. He's a great, he's a very powerful voice. He's done a lot of really great stuff. They can't stand him, and they think they can take him out. They really surgically drew his district to try to go after him. And when you go into it around around Wake Forest and the precincts that they carved out of his district to make it tough for him, you can see they really had the guns out for Terrence. We feel pretty good about 35 though. It's maybe look like an R3, but it is Wake County. He's overlapping territory there with a really great candidate for the state Senate, Mary Wells Bodie, who's running the Granville Wake district. So we feel pretty good about Terrence. I know Terrence is a big fan of Neighbors on Call as well. I know you guys have been really supportive of him. I think he's a really good candidate. He stands a much better shot. I don't really think of that as an R3. I think that is more as a 50-50. So I feel pretty good about that.
Blair, do you mind just saying what R3 means and what D2 means and stuff? Not everybody knows that lingo.
Yeah, sure. So
Thanks.
it's just the partisan lean of the district, right? So I know a D1 is a closer district than a D5, right? It's a points of a partisan lean, and where those come from, by the way, is Dave's redistricting app, which is everyone's favorite new toy on the internet. It's a lot of fun. It's a interactive map where you can review and zoom in and look at the precinct level districts for how they drew all of our maps for the state house, state senate, congressional, or in lots of other states too. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure that you can put the link here somewhere. I'm sure many of you have already done that already. So obviously R1, a little bit easier to win than an R4, right? And that's Ben Clark, his district, I think we were talking about before, down in District 9, Christy Clark in Mecklenburg, down in District 98. Christy 98 and 103, I believe that is Laura Budd, who's running down there in Mecklenburg. Those are very winnable districts. And, it looks a little bit, an R+4 may sound like a pretty strong partisan lean, but actually it's Mecklenburg County. Mecklenburg County, the thing about this is that those counties that are changing really, really fast, that you think Mecklenburg, you think Wake, Guilford, a lot of these other places, they're changing so fast that the partisan leans don't always accurately represent the real political leaning of that county. So Mecklenburg, especially South Mecklenburg, is changing so fast. Those are effectively 50-50 districts as well, even if they may, they may handicap them, one way or the other. Those are really, really, strong districts. They're going to be ones that we are very closely focused on ourselves. Carolina Forward, we will be, doing our Carolina Forward slate again that we will announce after the maps are finalized. And again, we're not expecting huge changes in a lot of these districts, but we want to make sure that they are finalized before we go forward with that, as I'm sure Neighbors on Call will be as well. The big point here that I think we all need to understand is that we can hold Governor Cooper's veto. That is the goal. Those are the goalposts for this cycle. We can do that. We can do it in the House and we can do it in the Senate. If we can sustain his veto in both chambers, then we're going to be in a really, really good place going into 2024, and probably have some map changes and a very different political environment generally. It's not going to be easy, but we need to give it all we can, and that's what we're going to be doing.
Blair, do you have easy access to well, first of all, let me just say, I know Senator Chaudhuri has to go because he's going to a basketball game that starts really soon. So I just want to tell him goodbye and thank you so much for being here. He's getting lots of thanks in the chat too. And thank you so much for being here and enjoy your game.
Yeah, no, thank you, Becca and Susan, and y'all are in great hands with Blair, but I put my cell number in the chat. As I mentioned, folks should feel free to reach out to me if they want an update or briefing on what's happening. I mean, this is what I did as whip last cycle. This is very important to me. And again, I really want to commend the work that you're doing. I really think this is the most important work that we can do as Democrats in the state. So I am incredibly grateful to be part of tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know what the name of Davidson's team is, but go
Be the Wildcats. Thank you.
The Wildcats.
go Eagles for who else posted out there too. Thanks.
I want to answer one question that a couple of people, Lee and some other people are putting in the chat here. Why is upholding a veto in both chambers important? And that's a very good question. So there's two big answers to that. First is there are a lot of members of the Democrat caucus and they don't always work as a team. So we do have some more conservative members. We have more independently minded members. And sometimes they will side with the Republicans in overriding the governor's veto. That was a factor going in the budget, in that awful Duke energy bill that they passed, a couple of other things where there are some Democrats ready to vote for it as well. And so then that gives Phil Berger, Tim Moore, the Republican leaders, they go to the governor and they say, hey, Gov, we got some votes in your caucus and we're going to override your veto. So when we can do that in more than one chamber, that deepens our defense. The second big reason is what happened in 2020. It wasn't 19, it was 20, when Republican leadership in the House, and this is a famous thing that a lot of people will remember who've been around here for a while. 2020, Republican leadership in the House lied to Democratic leaders. And they said on 9/11, we're not going to have any votes. There's the memorial service for 9/11, everyone can go to it and we won't worry about it and whatever. So a bunch of Democrats go to the 9/11 memorial service. What actually happens, a message goes out to the Republican members to, hey, everyone show up to the House. Everyone show up to the House while the Democrats aren't there. They get enough Democratic members, they get all the Republican members show up. And to do business, they have to have a quorum. They have it, and they managed to get enough people there to establish a quorum. They open the House, and because all the Democrats are gone, the Democrats aren't there to vote. And then the Republicans stage a veto override vote of Governor Cooper's veto of the Republican budget. It was super dirty, and you kind of can't believe it's legal, but they did it. It was a big thing. If you remember Deb Butler, that was her famous video. Mr. Speaker, I will not yield. You will not do this to the people of North Carolina and so forth. It was a great video, but they did it. And they did it and they lied. It was incredibly dishonest. It was David Lewis and John Hardister and Tim Moore and those guys, and they don't care. And so that's how they overrode the governor's veto in the House last year for the budget. And fortunately, the Democrats, it didn't make many friends with the Democrats. So all the Democrats in the Senate held together. They held Governor Cooper's veto. And that's why they didn't get their really awful budget bill passed in 2020. That stuff happens. So the more obstacles we can put in place, if they'll do that with the state budget, they will do that with an abortion ban. They will do that with a constitutional carry bill, right? There are 18 Republican legislators in the House right now who support putting loaded firearms on school teachers. So giving your first grade teacher a loaded Glock on her hip. They want to do that. They've proposed bills to do that. And it has a lot of support. 21 legislators co-sponsored a bill to ban abortion after 6 weeks this session. And they'll do it if they can. And so the more places that we can block those measures by upholding the governor's veto, and he will veto those bills. So we have to uphold his veto and every place we can.
Blair, there were a lot of questions in the chat about specifically about the maps, and there are a lot of folks who have recently moved to North Carolina. We have a lot of out-of-state folks who don't know North Carolina very well. Without, I don't know if you have the maps at your fingertips to share. If not, I can share the Dave's redistricting link.
I do.
Okay, and maybe not to go into like every single district that you were just talking about, but it sounds like there was sort of a theme of around Wake and around Mecklenburg being key areas, as well as Cumberland. And just to point, if you don't mind just pointing out on the map, just because so people who live here have a sense of like what they are drivable to, and people out of state have a sense of where they're calling
Yeah,
to.
sure. So let me see if I can, maybe I can do, but I just dropped in the chat here a link to, so carolinaforward.org/data. We have maps that we have resources there where you can find all the current House, Senate, and congressional maps, all on Dave's redistricting app, it's really good stuff. You can all see it there. The thing about Wake County, which is where Raleigh is that there's so many people in it, they have to keep it all in one county. And the big challenge for Republicans is how can we carve, this is a very blue county. Like it went for Biden by a lot of points. So the big challenge is how do we carve it up to carve out some Republican districts here, right? And that's what they've done. So that's how, they managed to carve out a Republican House seat in Southern Wake. That's how they're going after Sydney and for her Senate seat. They're going after Terrence. In Mecklenburg, the southeastern Mecklenburg has a more Republican leaning section to it, and they just draw a little district around it and say we're going to put a Republican there, and we can pack all the Democrats into a couple of spots. And so the good news is if you're anywhere in the triangle, I mean, you can get any of these places in like 30 minutes. I mean, I live in Chatham, between Pittsburgh and Chapel Hill. We can get any of those places pretty closely. Any of you people who just moved here from out of state, welcome, by the way. Our state is a lot more fun politically than yours, and more tragic in some ways, but it's a lot of fun because we're really, the key thing here, by the way, that I want to impress on everybody is that we are headed in the right direction. I was born and raised in Virginia. I've been here for 15 years. But North Carolina is clearly on the trajectory Virginia is on. When I was growing up there, it was a solid red state, and now it's basically a blue state. Glenn Youngkin, notwithstanding, they have 2 Democratic senators, pretty blue state. We are headed in the right direction. The question is, how fast do we get there? We want to get us there a little faster. So if you're anywhere in this area that where Becca is, circling there, that's Wake County, that's Raleigh. You can get to any of these places pretty easily. 36, 37, that's like Holly Springs, Apex area, Fuquay.
This is Terrence up here, 35.
Right there in Wake
Sign
County.
up for canvassing with Terrence, that's where you're going.
Yeah.
And Sydney's
and
down here.
Yeah, they're really easy to get to.
And this is Ricky Hurtado over here.
And up there in Alamance, and some exciting stuff going up there in Alamance. By the way, and Becca, I mentioned this to you when we spoke, texted earlier. We have our new polling is just in just this week. So you're going to see some new polling coming out from us like in the next 3 weeks or so. We do statewide polling on a regular basis, and we have some fun stuff coming up in Alamance that I can't talk about just yet. But lots of people in North Carolina are really mad about redistricting, and we're going to drop it next week when the trial begins in the state Supreme Court. So that's great. But down in Mecklenburg, you're right. You see that little wedge there.
So this is House. So you mentioned 100, which I don't see, but it's,
Yeah, you got to zoom
That
in a
one.
little bit. It's next to 104 down the southern part of Mecklenburg.
Reddish one.
the reddish one
Yeah, there you go.
down here.
So that's 104, and then 103 there. That's the new one they just carved out. Like that little area there is probably the most Republican place in Mecklenburg. It's still not that Republican, and that is where one of our key races is. It's a wonderful woman named Laura Budd who's running down there, and she's great. Rachel Hunt, who used to hold that seat down there, she is now running for the state Senate to replace Jeff Jackson. And they're wonderful. Rachel Hunt, of course, the daughter of Jim Hunt, governor of North Carolina at one point.
And I know Janice Robinson's on this call, who does a lot of organizing down in this area. So if you're down there, you could chat her up in the chat.
Oh, you should.
And
There's a question here. Where is Wesley? Wesley's district, he's over there. Is he 105? Is he 104?
I do not know.
He's one of those.
And then Cumberland is down here. So this is Fayetteville area. And those of us who called a lot for Kimberly Hardy in 2020, we were calling 45 or 43.
right.
Gosh, no, I can't remember.
43, yeah.
43, you're right. And Frances Jackson was 45, and she was even closer at that time.
Very, very close. Yeah.
Oh,
And by the way, you'll recall that Kimberly Hardy won her primary against a guy named Elmer Floyd, who was a Democrat who used to hold that district. Elmer Floyd is running again. He wants to.
I didn't know that.
There's a primary down there. Yeah.
And then just let's super quick look at the Senate seats, and then we can squeeze in a couple questions for you. 17 is Sydney Batch. Here's Jay Chaudhuri's district right there in the middle. This is the Granville. Isn't this the Granville Wake one we were talking about?
Right.
Whoops. And Mary Wills Bodie, who is one of the candidates for that race, is on our call.
Yeah. And Mary, she is already invested a lot in running out there. Her whole family is from Granville, apparently, and is very excited about that race.
Nice.
And before I put this one down, is there anything else you want to highlight about the Senate map? You want?
What I'll say is that the Senate map is a little harder to gerrymander, just given. So North Carolina has this stupid way of drawing their districts. It's called county clusters, and it's all because of this. And Jennifer Bremer's on here, right? Like she could tweet this much more intelligently than I could. But basically, there's this boneheaded way that the courts back in like the 90s or the early 2000s or whatever decided this way that like we do redistricting, where like they'd like put these clusters of counties together, and then those were where you'd have to like dice up all the counties. And as far as I know, no state in the country does it like this, but that's how we do it. And the way it's done for the Senate makes it a little harder to gerrymander. They can still gerrymander it, but it makes it a little trickier. As you can see, Becky, you see that like District 2 over there on the eastern side there, that like grotesque snake looking thing.
Yeah.
That's great.
And District 1 was, we didn't focus there in 2020, but I know there was a lot of volunteer work going on there. Is that a district to keep our eye on?
District 1, probably not. I think we're probably not going to win that. It's Bobby Hanig. I think he's running for the Senate out there. He's awful. He wears these obnoxious little bow ties, and he hates he hates abortion. That's basically his whole platform. And it's a very conservative area that it's a lot of very economically depressed counties up there. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are pretty conservative. So I don't think that's going to be a very competitive race for us. Someone out here asked in the chat about Sydney's district. So why the Republicans have it in for Sydney Batch, Joan. There are really two reasons for that. One is, well, a couple of reasons. First of all, Sydney's a very, very good candidate. She is incredibly well-spoken, incredibly intelligent, and could be really, really, she could be dynamite as a candidate statewide one day. So they want to shut that down. Two, she's a Black woman, and they hate when they're in Senate. Three, power. They think they can draw a district there where a Republican can win. And so Jesus Christ himself could run there, and they try to draw him out of his district. And that's really the long and short of it. They just want that. They just want that seat.
So it is 8:30. If you don't mind staying just a couple extra minutes with Patience, who's one of the Knock East chapter leaders, has been watching for questions in the chat. So Patience, maybe you could just give us a couple. And while you're doing that, Isabel, you've been paying attention to the signups. So maybe you could throw some totals in the chat for us at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of the questions have been answered, but Senator Chaudhuri mentioned that he hoped that in a couple of election cycles, we would be able to flip the Senate. And so the question is, what's the longer term outlook for the current maps, the current bad maps? If we're stuck with them, do you think it's reasonable that within a couple election cycles or within this 10-year period, we'll be able to flip the Senate or the House?
So actually, Becca, we should probably do another presentation at some point, because we actually we commissioned a study looking at that exact question, Patience. And the big thing here is North Carolina as a whole is drifting toward Democratic at several points per election cycle. And again, it's instructive to contrast where we are to where Virginia was. All right. Where it took Virginia a while because their maps were gerrymandered as well, but eventually the population shifts in such a way that it breaks gerrymanders. We are going to break these gerrymanders. I don't know if it's going to be in 26 or 28 or even 30. It's going to depend on waves and pendulums, and this happens in presidential year, and who votes and whatever. And if the Democrats can figure out how to, campaign out of a paper bag, right? If they can talk to the right people and campaign in the right way and all those sort of things. The point is that the fundamentals are in our favor. North Carolina is becoming more Democratic. It's not becoming more Republican. This is not a state where Mark Robinson is a natural winner. It just isn't. So we are going to win the legislature. We could do it in a couple of cycles. We're not going to do it in this cycle. And we have to be clear about that, but we can make progress in the cycle that we can build on for 24 and 26. But the point is, in this decade, we are going to win back North Carolina. We are going to win it back in a big way. We're going to take both Senate seats in this state. And these things are all going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And so we have to think strategically, we have to think long-term, and we have to remember this is a multi-cycle effort, and it is going to happen.
Okay. This question might have been better for Senator Chaudhuri, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there. What can we say when we're canvassing about what the Democrats and Governor Cooper have accomplished that are pertinent to voters' needs and will resonate with them?
In my view, it's probably one thing is jobs. So Governor Cooper's a jobs governor, right? We've had a big, it feels like there's an announcement every week, like, 1,000 jobs are going to Wake, 2,000 jobs are going to Guilford. Those things are really big. COVID makes everyone really angry. The reality is that Governor Cooper's management of COVID was probably the best in the Southeast. He kept our schools open for longer. Our caseloads were much lower. If you looked at some of the contrast between us and Tennessee, us and Georgia, it was ugly, right? That's a hard message for some people because everyone COVID just gets everyone mad. That's really the reality. But right now, our big, one thing we can talk about are we can talk about schools, reinvesting in schools, and reversing the decade-long divestment from education that we've seen under Republican leadership. We need to talk about, expanding our economy and expanding our economy in a fair way. There's a lot of there's a lot of things around messaging you can go into, and it really depends on the area, kind of the demographic you're talking to. Those are some of the things we do a lot of our polling around, and we'll have to talk about kind of that effort as well.
Okay, I'm going to hand it back to you, Becca, but I'll just say a couple people have put comments in the chat about how discouraged they've been, and they know a lot of people who are discouraged, and that this conversation has inspired them and made them feel more hopeful. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That is really great. And we're so glad to hear it, because we need all of us. There's so much to do. So we have a clear path forward here. So thank you so much for that. Blair, thank you for talking with us. Clearly, we have much more to talk about. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight and for committing to take action. As of a few minutes ago, Isabel gave us an update that we were up to 87 commitments for phone banks and canvases, which is fantastic. And it's probably even a few more by now. So thank you. Keep it up. And we will keep it up, because we will keep filling up that calendar with opportunities for you to talk to voters. Please look for your weekly email from Neighbors on Call every Monday from your chapter leaders. And tomorrow you're going to get a special email. It'll have the link for t-shirts, but you have to order by Tuesday. That's when it closes. And of course, we'll have the link to sign up, and we'll put the link in there to those maps on the Carolina Forward website that we were just looking at. So thank you again so much, everybody, and have a wonderful night.
And yes, thank you too. For me, I also am cheered and my spirits buoyed by seeing this wonderful group. You all are just wonderful. So thanks so much. And thanks for our candidates and elected officials and everyone who has been here with us tonight, and Blair. Thank you. Y'all are fun too.
Night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Blair.